When Johann Sebastian Bach died in 1750, he left behind his wife, Anna Magdalena Bach, many of his children, and a mountain of written music. Two of the manuscripts that are inside of that mountain of music are referred to as the Anna Magdalena Bach notebook. One's from 1722, the other's from 1725. Now, this notebook has a special mystique in the musical world, I'll sort of say. They offer a glimpse into what Bach's house sounded like. They offer a glimpse into Bach's domestic life, where he probably had, at sometimes, up to 20 children running around his house, which is just absolutely crazy. Bach didn't write all of the pieces inside of the notebook. We're still figuring that out. But the notebook itself has been used to teach probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of musicians over the last couple hundred years. So I have taken the time to arrange 15 of the tunes from this notebook for the mandolin. They're not that hard. This is literally teaching music, folks. You can think of it's like minuets, polonaises, right? Marches, just your typical Baroque dance fare. And they're not that hard. They run the gamut from slightly easy to providing some consternation if you don't play them at Mach speed. We're going to take a little bit of time to do the music history thing. Let's just explore a little bit of Anna Magdalena Bach's life. You know, let's look at the history of these notebooks, the impact of these notebooks, and we'll just listen to what some of these tunes sound like. I think 15 is too many to listen to, so we're only going to listen to 5, but everything is up on my website, mando.studio, with standard notation and tabs. Let's get into it. Open to the first page, class. Why should you care about a 300-year-old manuscript? Super reasonable question. Let me try and sell you on it, okay? Give me a second. So, the 1725 notebook specifically has some of the most popular music in all of Western music history. And it's not because people are just listening to this for leisure on their way to work or whatever. No. These are rites of passage, essentially. These tunes have been used to teach millions of people on their journey to just getting good at their musical instrument. You can sort of think of them as musical standardized tests, if you will. Let me show you. So, if someone picks up a new instrument typically and is like intending to learn classical music, they'll follow one of two paths. The first being they'll get a method book, something like Essential Elements, Accent on Achievement, right? These books will show a new student how to hold their instrument, how to blow it, right? How to finger certain notes, and how to play hot cross buns slightly out of tune with 50 other people, because it's mostly for band and orchestra. They have their place. It's super useful, probably 15, 20 bucks well spent, right? But the second version's a little more interesting, I'll say. The second version is the high-stakes version. It is graded repertoire. There are essentially boards out there that categorize classical music by difficulty, and you learn a piece with your teacher. You then go take a test. Someone else hears you play this piece of music, and they give you the thumbs up or the thumbs down. You either move up in the world or you don't. And this system kind of shows and teaches people how to get good fast and how to get real good, right? And these boards are essentially gatekeepers of the musical world, if you will. They include organizations such as ABRSM, which is the Associated Board of the Royal Schools of Music in the UK, right? The Royal Conservatory of Music, or RCM, AMEB, the Australian Music Examinations Board, and you can think of the Suzuki method as something here too. It's a little bit different. There aren't necessarily tests. It's more of a teaching, philosophy, but we're going to lump it in here as well. Now, in many of these systems, tunes from the Anna Magdalena Bach notebook do appear. And just to sort of show you that I'm not making this stuff up, here is a chart that kind of lets you know what's what. Just showing some various examples and various instruments where some of these different tunes from the notebook are used to teach folks. I do want to highlight minuets 114, 115, and 116 as the big three. They're basically special in the minds of millions of people as like their first introduction to Baroque sounds, essentially. Even if Bach didn't necessarily write all of these pieces, people think of them as Bach tunes, and they are special because they worked really hard probably on learning these three Bach tunes fairly early on in their musical careers. So Anna Magdalena Bach's work really has been used to teach millions. You can be one of those millions. You can do it yourself, right? With the pieces from this video. So let's get into talking a little bit about Anna's life and the notebooks themselves. Although Anna is best known as the wife of Johann Sebastian Bach, she had a fascinating journey herself. She was born into a musical family, with both of her parents being musicians. And like her parents, she became a musician herself. And she was so freaking good, she was recruited to be on a prince's payroll at Köthen. Hopefully I pronounced that right, my German-speaking friends. There, she met the musical director, some random guy named Johann, and they married 6 months later. At that point, she kind of became a lady, and although I'm thinking Downton Abbey, I know that's like over 100 years later, right? She inherited Bach's children from his first marriage, 4 small little ones ranging in age from 6 to 11, and she had 13 additional children with him. 13! That's crazy. Of the 13 she birthed, only 7 survived to adulthood. She taught and sang and ran her household, although there's a little bit of a discussion on how much of a professional musician she was once she had to manage so many children. To be honest, who has time for that, right? At the very least, she returned to her previous employer's estate, the prince, to sing at his funeral. She was often Bach's copyist, and she spent over 30 years married to Bach before he died. She then died 10 years later in Leipzig. So now, let's talk about the notebooks that Anna and her family curated and collected, right? One of my resources said that during the life and times of J.S. Bach, it was common practice for artistic families to make their own house albums. And I'm like, what is a house album? Is that like why we call like a vinyl like an album, or like a CD an album sometimes? I don't know. Doing some further research, it looks like this phrase house album refers to like a privately compiled household manuscript containing handwritten music for teaching, practice, home performance, reflecting what families kind of actually play rather than what was formally published and popular. This is stuff that your family likes and likes to listen to. Let's take a look at both of them. For the 1722 notebook, right, this manuscript contains a collection of keyboard music from Johann Sebastian Bach, much of it copied in Anna Magdalena's hand, which is pretty interesting. Among its contents are early versions of what we call the French suites. For our purposes, this isn't super applicable. We're not going to play tunes out of this, but it is interesting. Let's take a look at the second book now. So 1725 is where it's at. This manuscript is a much larger book and it has a lot more content. Much of it's still written inside of Anna Magdalena's handwriting. There are 2 piano partitas here, but then there's a number of pieces that Anna and her family have collected about town, essentially. As time has marched on, musicologists have found that more and more of these pieces were written by people that aren't Bach, such as Petzold, Couperin, and a few of Bach's children. They are often in Baroque dance form and are things like minuets, marches, polonaises. For the most part, the music itself isn't super hard, it's not super tough. I found a research paper that said although there is no direct evidence of a pedagogical purpose, this notebook records a mentor-pupil relationship between Johann Sebastian Bach and Anna Magdalena, and between her as a mother and Bach's sons. Indeed, the notebook appears to have been just kind of like an ever-evolving thing, and it's a working document rather than a fixed collection that folks thought of they were going to make initially, right? After Anna Magdalena's death, these manuscripts that she had were passed on to her children. Eventually, these were collected, reviewed, and compiled and published as part of the greater Bach revival that kind of happened 100 or so years later when Bach was just getting more and more popular. In terms of legacy, she gave us a lot, folks. I mean, she gave us some of the most popular pieces of music that people play every single day. Additionally, she was Bach's scribe. She was the person who, when someone wanted a copy of a Bach tune, she was the person who made that copy by hand, right? Additionally, I mean, she kind of is the reason why we have the Bach cello suites. Her version, her handcrafted version, is often considered to be the most authentic. Same thing with the Bach's violin sonatas and partitas. Her version is often considered to be the best source for that information. After researching this video, I will say her life seemed a little bit crazy. It had some peaks, but boy, did it have some troughs, right? We are talking, she was a singer and she got to sing for essentially royalty, right? She had kind of a rock star job. And she met a man who was one of the best musicians that have ever lived, by all accounts. She fell in love with this man and just had tons of children. She was basically rich, well off. She was a lady, right? And she had what a lot of people wanted, right? But some of her lows were also pretty hard. You know, she lost a lot of children. That can't have been easy. And yeah, when she passed, she was very poor, near destitute, taking care of 2 daughters alone. And some of her children and some of the children from Bach's prior marriage did help her out, but she still needed government assistance. And when she died, she was buried close to Bach, but not necessarily at his side. It was just seemed kind of a rough go at the end. But I do appreciate y'all taking the time to listen to this. I think her story is undertold as part of the greater Johann Sebastian Bach lore, right? She has more of an impact than I think a lot of people really understand. Let's talk about how I arranged some of these tunes. I don't know if people care about the arranging process, but a few people did, and they asked me about it, so I figured I would just put a little bit about that into the video. Feel free to skip ahead. This is keyboard music that we are arranging. This is piano, you know, harpsichord, right? So I've taken the right hand and then put that onto the mandolin almost directly. There is tons of additional room here for open chords, for, I don't know, double stops, triple stops, what have you, additional harmonies. I would absolutely recommend you messing around with that. I've done that previously with Minuet 114 right here, and you can see how complex it gets. It does make it more difficult, but I think there's a couple places where you can add just an extra double stop somewhere, and it actually gives a lot more life and beauty to these tunes. The next big concern was trills, mordents, appoggiaturas. These are all like slightly different things. And there's a Baroque way and there's like a modern way of doing many of these. I would say don't sweat it. It's literally the small stuff. Baroque music, you know, the term Baroque essentially means complexity. Trills add a lot of little notes, make stuff a lot more complex than it necessarily needs to be. This video is supposed to be essentially 15 beginner tunes. I didn't want that to be a hindrance for people, so I interpreted these for you. I tried to make good decisions and show you what this could look like. Feel free to change it. I have text versions linked on my website. You can click those and see what the original looks like in modern notation. And if that makes you happy, do it. But I'm not showing up with a knife at your back door at 2 a.m. if you play these trills wrong. I might show up with a mandolin, but not with a knife. And not the kitchen mandolin either, just the normal one. Anyway, trying to think. Yeah, I mean, I would say just go for it, have fun. As my music teacher says, slow it down. That is what I think you should do here as well. These are tunes that I think benefit, especially if you're a beginner. You can get a lot more from them. They're a lot easier if you play them slowly and in time, right? Consider using a metronome, right? But I did think these were fun tunes that could be easily arranged for mandolin. And guess what? I've been listening to Bach's entire catalog lately, and I think there are hundreds of other easy Bach tunes that we could arrange for mandolin that I'm not seeing anyone else do. So maybe that's a fun project down the line. Who knows? Thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate it. I worked really hard on these 15 tunes. If you want to listen to other people playing these tunes, I've got at least 5 examples on a bunch of different instruments linked in the description below on my website. Tons of work went into it. You can send me an email if you want to join my mailing list and get some free sheet music and just listen to what I'm thinking about, what I'm getting up to. I often post the music from the next video about a month early on my Patreon as well for comments and quality assurance purposes. But you can always send me an email at jtag@mando.studio. If you want to hop on that mailing list, feel free to comment, reach out, let me know what's going on, ask questions. I love hearing from folks. And yeah, be good, be safe, stay warm, call your mom. Bye.